Yeah, thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I'm excited to be one of your presenters as we discuss the many ways you can customize CK12 FlexBooks to fit your individual needs. Before we get into today's content, I do want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with the Zoom webinar platform. On your screen, you should see two different windows, one that says Q&A and one that says chat. The Q&A window is where we would like you to put any questions you have throughout our presentation today. We are going to stop after each large topic and address any of those questions you guys have submitted. And then the chat window is a place that we hope you guys will have community conversation. It looks like several of you are already starting the chat right now, which is awesome. The thing to make note of, though, is that we need you to change it from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. Unfortunately, Zoom defaults to all panelists, which would just send it to us here in this room. But if you want everybody to see what you're posting, make sure that you've done it to all panelists and attendees. Also, while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you do have any trouble with your video or sound, reach out in one of those windows and we will try to help you. So before we really get going for today, we want to find out a little bit more about you and your interest in FlexBooks. So we're going to launch a poll that will prompt you to respond to a short question. So here you go. You should be seeing it on your screen. Have you used and or customized a CK12 FlexBook? We've got 4 options for you there. I have yet to use CK12 FlexBooks. I use FlexBooks without customizing them. I customize FlexBooks, and I have built a FlexBook from scratch. So I am watching the results come in here. We'll give you guys a few more seconds to lock in your answers on that. Okay, just another second or two, and then we're going to share the results with you. All right, we're going to end this poll. And as you guys can see, this is awesome. We've got a lot of people here who have yet to use our FlexBooks. And so we're so glad that you're here for FlexBooks 101. This is definitely the place to get started. And then those of you who have used FlexBooks, looks like some of you have used them without customizing, and then a few of you have done the customization part, and then we have somebody on here who has built a FlexBook from scratch. So as you vets have some tips, please post them in the chat window as we're doing our discussion today. So let's go ahead and we're going to talk about today's core content.
Excellent. So today's session is called FlexBooks 101. For those of you brand new to FlexBooks, which sounds like, as Lindsay said, there are some of you, and maybe those who have used FlexBooks but not customized them for your specific curriculum, this is a great place to get started. So specifically during this webinar, we'll be covering the following topics. First, why choose a CK12 FlexBook? So what features make CK12 unique? Why customizable and shareable content is so important in the teaching profession? And then after that, finding a FlexBook in CK12 content. So navigating CK12 concepts, original FlexBooks, concept collection FlexBooks, and our user-generated content, or what we call community-contributed content. Then customizing. So this is FlexBooks 101, so we're going to be covering the basics. So deleting, reordering, adding, uploading content, as well as some best practices for working collaboratively with our books. So if you've worked on your own but haven't worked collaboratively, definitely think about kind of what that looks like and how that might be different. And then finally, publishing and sharing your FlexBook. So how to get your books in the hands of colleagues and students through the unique URL, schools page, share a plane, and our offline reader.
So by the end of this session, this is our goal. This is what we're covering today and what we think you'll be able to do after you complete this webinar. Basic things. We want you to be able to find a FlexBook that you can use as is or that you could choose to customize. We want to show you how to start a new FlexBook from scratch, if that's what you're interested in. Customize a FlexBook, do things like add chapters and sections, add chapter descriptions, reorder, delete, make basic edits, like Katie just said, publish and share a FlexBook. And then we'll dive a little bit into some of the best practices to keep in mind and a few ideas for how you might use them with students.
We occasionally run an advanced FlexBook editing session. In that session, we cover these advanced topics. So uploading, editing, and adding attributions for images, our different options for images, figure versus inline, embedding videos and other multimedia, using our math editor, and even LaTeX coding within that, linking to interactives, and then all sorts of fun formatting, headers, tables, element boxes, lines, page breaks, as well as kind of the difference between what you might see online versus a PDF version of your book. Now, if you want additional help with any of these skills right now, please be aware that this FlexBooks 101 session is focused on the basics. So we're going to prioritize questions related to the basics during the webinar. We will, as always, stay on to address any complex editing questions that need a live demonstration at the end of the presentation, but we want to make sure to cover kind of those basics and hit them within this webinar first.
So the first big question that we want to address is why choose a FlexBook? What makes us different from other content providers or platforms? You have a choice when choosing how to deliver content to your students, and you could use a traditional textbook, one that costs a fortune, weighs 10 to 20 pounds, is outdated from the minute it's on your shelf, and that never really follows the sequence of how you teach your subject. But I'm guessing a lot of you guys are here today because you've already decided that that model is outdated and just too costly as more and more schools are becoming budget conscious. So then you're faced with another choice. How do you replace those textbooks and still have a quality curriculum to give your students? We've talked to a lot of teachers who are using Google Docs as that solution, but as many of you know, this isn't always the best replacement for a book. It's a lot of different things in a lot of different places, and students and parents sometimes feel like they're missing out by not having a single source of content. So this is where CK12 FlexBooks can really change everything for you. I was recently in Liberty, Missouri, where they're at the start of this process. So they have like this incredible group of teachers who are working in PLCs to compile their own content. And this is content they've created and curated from other sources in a sequence that works for their school. So they've done all the right things. They've already customized for their needs and for their students, but they reached out to us because they're stuck. They don't know the best delivery method for their content. And that's where our FlexBook platform comes in as the best way to get quality, customized content in the hands of students.
So, one major advantage to CK12's customizable content and interactive books is that they can be accessed anywhere, anytime, and on any device. You have the power to read the entire collection of CK12 FlexBooks on any personal device, and you can download the textbooks to read offline with our app. Our friends in Liberty are going to compile all of their content in a FlexBook, and all of the students are going to have access to it on their devices through a URL. But one of the missions of CK12 is to get our books in the hands of any student who wants to learn, even in areas where internet isn't as readily available. So that's why we have recently released our Chrome offline reader, making the content available without consistent connectivity, even beyond personal devices. So be sure to go to the app or Google Play stores and download that app, or click on the offline reader link on any FlexBook page. And remember, all of our resources are free at CK12. You won't be asked for a credit card or hit a paywall. We are a nonprofit trying to make education accessible, and we are proud to be a cost-free solution for you.
So while we don't charge for any of our content, you can still rest assured that our FlexBooks are of the highest quality. To write our FlexBooks, we follow a model much like those of the traditional publishers. Our content has been developed by over 100 people who have PhDs, are professors, teachers, authors, NASA scientists, and other subject matter and domain experts over the past 10 years. If you're interested in seeing who the authors are on this book, you can always see that list of authors on our Meet the Team page. So While we're like traditional publishers in the creation of our content, one of the benefits of using a FlexBook is the ability to customize with interactive modalities, with videos, with resources you curate from other sources, all of this bringing your content to life. Another thing that you can't do with a traditional textbook is translate it into another language. And you can definitely do that with CK12's FlexBooks. We have some Spanish editions of FlexBooks that are built on our site, but with the Google Translate option that you'll see at the bottom of the screen, you have the ability to change any of our content into almost any language. And that's been a game changer for a lot of schools with the diverse needs of their students. When I'm out talking to teachers and students, one concern that sometimes comes up is that students lose out on writing in the margins or highlighting in a paper book. So I want to put your mind at ease there. Our FlexBooks allow students to use highlighters right on their screen and take any notes that will be available on their individual accounts.
So I think now might be a good time to show you a couple minutes of video footage highlighting some of our FlexBook users in Utah, Texas, Tennessee, and Idaho. You'll also get a glimpse of our executive director and co-founder, Neera Khosla, who started CK12 back in 2007 to radically change the old textbook model.
I love learning, and I actually really love books. But the problem with textbooks is that they are actually very limiting format, and not every child can learn from that. Textbooks are created to be average, so you cover almost every kind of student. The problem is that that doesn't work for every student. That's why we created FlexBooks. These are textbooks that are current, customizable, and of course, free.
We can embed multimedia components to make it more engaging for our students, to make it more relevant for our students, so that they're no longer using a static textbook, but one that's dynamic and rigorous and high quality and easily updated. Teachers can go and find a textbook that meets their needs, and they can constantly revise and edit as they go along.
We would be flat as teachers if we weren't always asking ourselves, what's in the student's best interest? What's going to be down the tunnel for them? Down the tunnel for them is less and less printed textbooks and more digital resources. And I'm not preparing them for their futures if I'm not learning how to use those resources as well.
I didn't realize that something this simple as online textbooks could change the way that I teach that much. But it's been pretty much a door that has opened that I can't close anymore.
CK12 actually meets and exceeds the standards that are required by our curriculum, our state and district curriculum.
If I were speaking to someone that was considering the CK12, I would say don't hesitate because of just the savings and just the practicality of it. But the current information and the ease of use with our students who are engaged with technology, there's just nothing else out there like it.
All right, so you can see more videos like that on our testimonials page if you want to hear from other educators and students of what they're saying about CK12. We included a break right now if we had any questions coming into our Q&A window. Right now it's empty, so my challenge to you guys, start giving us some questions. Maybe we haven't covered enough content yet for you to have your questions. So I'm going to keep going just a little bit more here, but please start asking us things in Q&A, and we'll get back to your questions soon. We're going to do a live demo here shortly, but before we really get started navigating the site and diving into all the ways to customize a book, I want to show you how easy it can be to take one of our FlexBooks and get it in the hands of students right away. Because like we said, you don't have to customize. We have a lot of content ready to go that you can get to your students right away. So here's the quick process. When you go to the ck12.org, you can navigate to the subjects browser. And here you see all the different subjects we offer. And you would click on one of those subjects and select a textbook. So to give you a sampling, this is what our middle school FlexBooks look like for science and math. You'll see that these are our concepts books, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on, but we do have comprehensive coverage for science and math in middle school and in high school. You see the different kinds of maths and the different kinds of sciences. So I would select the book that most closely aligns with my teaching needs. And then in a book, I'm a former English teacher, so I chose the Common Sense composition book that's on our site, not in the math and science arena. When I open that Common Sense composition book, I have the option to customize. You're going to see this customize link on the side of our FlexBooks. And when I press that, now I have the ability to take ownership of that book. So I'm creating a copy of this book for my library, essentially, and I'm going to give it a really crafty name like Lindsay's Common Sense Composition Book, and I'm going to save that book to my library. So the first thing I did was rename, and that's really all I have to do to create my version of the CK12 book. All of our books, really all of our modalities, any resources you're going to find on CK12 have a unique URL that you can put on your website. You can assign it through a learning management system, or we hope you're going to use our groups and assignments features that we have on CK12 to help with that process. But I could take this link and distribute it however I please, and all of a sudden the students are reading a book that I have created. So at a minimum, that's the basic process to get started with FlexBooks. But you guys are here because I'm sure you want to know a little bit more about customizing. So I'm going to kick it over to Katie, and she's going to start walking you through that process.
Thanks, Lindsay. So it looks like we have a couple of questions that came in while Lindsay was talking, which is great. So why don't I start with those, and then I can go into some other pieces. So as Lindsay just said, how easy is it to share? You can simply share that URL, and at the end of this presentation, we'll talk about some other options for sharing as well. We had a question about, is it possible for an individual teacher inside of a system to use CK12, or does the whole system have to adopt it? And the answer is it's totally possible. We have everything from a kid using it as a reference to a teacher using it for one class period, or for kind of a differentiated grouping, or for a whole class or department or a school or a district or even a state or country in some cases that are kind of using pieces as we work through or talking to us about how that might work across their country. So definitely options all the way down and up there. So keep that in mind as you work. And we had a question about what were the different modalities that could be input into a customizable FlexBook. And so some of the pieces, I'm just going to kind of scroll down on the homepage to here. So we have interactives, our simulations and our PLIX, adaptive practice. Those are kind of some of our core modalities, but basically any modality that's on our site, you can always, even if you can't embed it completely, you can definitely put a direct link using that URL for that modality. So you definitely have options kind of as you work your way in there. And then we had a question about kind of developing a FlexBook that supports something different. That would be kind of the idea of building it from scratch. And you're welcome to use that as kind of a container or a bucket to work our way through there. And then pull in external links or kind of pulling content that fits under our licensing. And we'll talk about all of that shortly. And then in terms of sharing a URL, a student has to sign in to see customized content. So if you're making updated changes, they would need to sign in to that account, which you'd probably want to encourage anyway if you want them to do practice that works with that. You can browse some of our content on our site before signing in, but all accounts are completely free to all users. We have options to kind of add users that don't have email addresses if you're a teacher within there. So all sorts of things that fall under group features. And why don't I just show you kind of right up here, if I sign out for a second, I can log back in or join by simply signing in Google. So any of you that use Google Classroom or anyone that uses Google Classroom or that uses other pieces within the system, you can easily kind of get to CK12 by just using that email account. And just one clarification on the URL, If you publish that content to our site, and we'll talk about that difference in this webinar as well, they would be able to see it. But if you have it internally and they needed to see that link, then they would need to log in from there. And it says, can the same book be changed to varied reading levels, or does it need to be a separate book? So you can use the same book as your basis, but if you want different variations of it, you would need to make a copy and customize the copy of that book to kind of go from there. And I think there's one question from Brian talking about co-teaching. I think I answered, or that was just kind of a comment from there. But if there's anything else, as I demo some more of this site, feel free to add in questions, and Lindsay will just stop me and kind of add things in, or we'll stop at the end of this piece of it. So that first part that Lindsay talked about was finding a resource. So if you're trying to find a resource to address either a single topic you're teaching or maybe an area that you're teaching, you have a lot of different options. And I'm going to try to address different subjects and levels as I work my way through, but feel free to ask questions specific to an area if you want me to look something up and kind of show you that as we continue to answer questions. But let's say I'm teaching a unit on the water cycle. I could just simply search water cycle in our search bar. And this will pull up our search results within CK12. So you'll see a whole concept, some video, a PLIX interactive, a lesson plan, some activities, lots of different things. I can filter by type. So if I'm just looking for textbooks, pages, sections of textbooks, I could pull up different reads. I could pull up whole concepts again, which would give me kind of this concept. I can sort by grade. And then a couple of things that if you've added stuff to your library, you can, or customized things, you'll find it in your library. So you can always search and then limit to that library area. So that's an option. And then community contributed content is great because that's stuff that other users have either created from scratch or customized from our stuff and then republished to our site. So only stuff that's published will show up under this tab. But if I went to any one of these sections or these concept pages, this will kind of answer that different modality type question as well. Here you'll see some featured modalities. So a modality is just kind of a different way to learn a topic. So reading it, watching a video, doing some practice, working with an interactive. I can just click on this for a second so you can see what that PLIX might look like. Let's see if we can load that up. And you can see all these different options kind of as you work your way through here. And then you can filter if you're looking to kind of see right before that switched over, if you're looking to see different levels for basic or advanced to kind of challenge or support students. And so all our interactives have some sort of exploration piece in here. But at the top here, you'll see I can pull that URL from the top and I can use that within my FlexBook so that I can go from there and say, okay, I really want to incorporate that into my book as I'm customizing. So different options from there. You can search for non-STEM content. So we're primarily math and science, but I could search for a literature book this way as well. And you're not going to see a ton of content in CK12, but you might see some community contributed content. This is a teacher down in Tullahoma, Tennessee. I could search for full textbooks, and those might be great starting places for you to customize content for another area or build a project-based book or something like that as you work. If you're looking for other resources to go within there, you can continue to search. Or you could, I kind of showed you for a second, I could go down here. We looked at a PLIX for a second. Maybe I teach physics or chemistry, and I could talk about forces and how much it happens to work, and an inclined plane. So this is a simulation, starts with a question, and then students can kind of change the weight, they can change the number of friends, all these pieces. Once again, it has that URL at the top that students can use as, like, or teachers can use to embed just kind of that link to the simulation if you wanted to do that. So you could browse based on simulations, or you could browse based on kind of an interactive PLIX or even adaptive practice, or you could search and filter by that content area. Now, if you wanted to do kind of a whole area, if you want to see all the subjects that CK12 offers, you can kind of see them here. And if I picked one of them, let's say physics, You'll see direct links to simulations, interactives, study guides, which are kind of like a one-page PDF summary, textbooks, which we'll talk about shortly. And then if I picked any of these larger category areas, I could expand it and say, okay, well, we have all these different concepts within here. And by clicking on a concept, it would take me to that concept page again. And I could, in this case, there's also a simulation because it's a physics one. But I could customize this read. I could go from there. I could go back and I could do the same thing and kind of pull from, where were we? Here we go. I could pull stuff about Newton's first law, second law, third law, kind of combining them together and create almost like a unit with all these different resources. So you can definitely see options for our featured resources, our other modalities, finding it this way or that way as we go. So let's talk about those textbooks as well, because if you want kind of that whole curriculum as your starting place, on any page you'd see the kind of the concept options and then the whole textbook option. And here you'll see a physics concepts intermediate book, or our original CK12 physics book, and then some other stuff that's been donated to CK12 that covers a number of different areas in physics. If I went back to the homepage, and this lovely green logo will get you there. So if I go back there and I picked a different topic, let's say algebra here. Algebra spans a significant number of classes, the concepts within there. So when I click on FlexBooks, you'll see not only FlexBooks for middle school and but also those for high school. So you can navigate between them. You can actually either scroll down to some Spanish translations of our concept books, and you can actually sort by levels to say, okay, I just want books that are basic in algebra, or I want books that are advanced. There's like an honors algebra 1 book here that might be useful. And I could just search for my Spanish books. Let's go back to all levels, and you can see those. So different filtering options as you work your way through, and you can pick any one of these. It's also a great option. Let's go back to English for a second. If you wanted to pick one of these books, let's say a 7th grade option, I could say I wanted to use parts of this, and you could kind of, instead of building a book up by pulling all these different concepts, you could start with a book and customize this whole book and then say, I'm just going to use the sections on decimals, fractions, and integers, and kind of build a mini unit out of it that way. So you can work in either direction. One thing to note, kind of before we go into the whole customizing place, if I look at one of these sections in here, so let's say I pick visual patterns. For any of our concepts books, they're tagged directly to that concept page we were talking about. And we just updated this. This used to say preview for teachers, but we actually now made it really easy for you to assign the practice that goes with that. So I could preview it and see what it looked like as a teacher. Say, oh, we got some different parts right here. Or I could go back. Clearly I didn't do anything, so it's not giving me a great score there. But this is a focus on FlexBooks, so join us for our practice webinars if you want to see more of that, or ask us after. But now I can assign that practice directly to one of my classes. So that's something that's been updated even just since school started this fall. So definitely feel free to use that as you work your way through. So some different options there. I'm going to go back to that FlexBooks tab because I want to make sure to cover one thing that's super, super important. If I look at this and I look at my Algebra 1 concept book, and I think my Algebra 1 second edition book here, they cover the same topics. So if I look here, I have a chapter on equations, real numbers, equations of lines, etc. If I go back for a second, actually I can just open it in another tab. So algebra concepts, let's go to high school. You're seeing the same kind of chapters in here. And if I go into any particular chapter, real numbers, for the concept collection, here we have 11 different sections. In the Algebra 1 original book, we have, let's see, so it loads, we have 6. And so what happens is we said a lot of traditional textbooks teach multiple lessons within a book or within a lesson, and they hit different topics within there. When I used to teach high school, I would often kind of split the homework into 3 or 4 days from a section because there were really 3 or 4 different skills to learn about that. And so we said we really want to focus down and narrow down on those skills. So we're going to take these topics and break them into more sections and split addition and subtraction, and kind of go division and multiplication. And that way you really get to understand those individual skills and practice those individual skills. And those are addressed kind of directly within here. So I can see that practice right here. Now, as a teacher, I see this. I'm going to actually share a different screen for a second, just so you can see this. If I switch over here, I'm going to share a student account version. So this is a student. And if I go to that same page, section 2.3 from Algebra Concepts, we actually said, well, students really just want to, if they're going to practice, they want to do it right there. And so we put a practice widget in here, and you can actually see the student practice questions right away. And so this is the same practice you would be assigning them, but they can do it right there as they're kind of referencing and understanding that material. So that's just something to know, kind of the difference, one of the few differences you'd see between a teacher version of that book and a student version of this book. So with that, I'm going to go back to the teacher page just so we can continue to navigate, because the next part that I'm going to talk about includes some stuff that's specific to teachers after I kind of cover schools.
Before you do that, let's tackle a couple questions here. We had a question while you're showing them where the different resources are. Are there any elementary resources, specifically this person teaches third grade science?
Sure. So if we go back into that all subject area, we have kind of for mathematics, videos and practice for a number of different grade 5 math areas, 1 through 5. And then for science, we just actually added FlexBooks for kindergarten through 5th grade. So that's what you'll see from us at this point for 3rd grade science. You could actually take this book right here. And when we talk about customization, you can customize this. It doesn't at this point in time, this is a brand new book, so it doesn't currently have that digital practice attached to it. But you definitely can use this as a starting place for your teaching within that area. And let's say you went into a section there as well.
Then another question, and I don't know if this is rhetorical or if this is an actual question, but the question was, how is this free? Seriously. Yeah, we're amazed too. It's really a privilege to work for the CK12 Foundation. We are funded by a private family foundation. And so we are a non-profit, but even more than that, we're a non-revenue nonprofit. So what that means to you guys is that we're never going to ask you to enter in any credit card information. You don't see any advertisements on our site. Truly, this is a gift from a family foundation trying to make education accessible for people around the world. So when we say free, we mean absolutely, absolutely free. So anything we're showing you, if you're waiting for like the catch, like, but when are you gonna start charging, or do I have to get the upgrade or whatnot? Never, no, it's free. It's the gift to you. So, all right. So back to, that's our questions for now. Back to what you're demonstrating here, Katie.
So one of those things on the teacher kind of homepage that you'll see besides the interactives and that adaptive practice was that schools icon. So whether searching and clicking on the community contributed tab or clicking on schools. So we just had a question about, elementary science. If I went down to Florida, those science books were kind of adapted partly in conjunction with Polk County school districts down in Florida. And if I scroll down, you'll see all of these different schools that have customized books and republished them to our site to share with others. So if I went down all the way to Polk County, you'll see 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade science. And they started that process by taking our middle school content and converting it and adapting it to elementary school. And so that was a great place to start. These schools are another awesome place to look when you're looking for other information and other areas. So if I went back up here and went to Tennessee, you'll see we have a district down there that said, we love your platform, and we actually want to build our own social studies curriculum on it. So you'll see a curriculum for social studies in here. You'll see history in here. You'll see some great teacher resources for English that have a lot of links out to resources. English is a little tricky with copyrighted material for literature, but you can definitely kind of scroll and check that out. And then, you always want to just think about different teachers have different standards for what they're willing to include. So just, look at the book, see what's happening. We keep our content separate from user-generated content, specifically so that we can maintain kind of our high level of quality. Other teachers might publish something that they're working on, and it might be in, kind of a work in progress that their students are using. But if you're going to use it, just double check and see what's included in there. But definitely those schools tab are a great place to find other resources. And if I went into any of those at all, so let's say I picked kind of a Algebra 1 book here, I can customize this just like I can customize CK12 content because it's republished under this site and under our license. So you're welcome to find information from there. And then the last place to kind of look for information and resources is if you wanted to look for stuff based on standards. So if you are looking for a book based on standards, let's say that I was looking for a Common Core book for calculus because I'm teaching an 11th grade calc class. And here you'll see a number of different books that are aligned there, and you can see which Common Core standards actually are covered in any particular chapter. So feel free to explore that from the book level. You could also go back to that homepage, and this is something that is not readily accessible for students because most students don't care about that standard that they're working for. So if you're accidentally signed in as a student or just browsing as a student, just make sure that you go there and see what's happening. So I could pull up Common Core Math. I could say I want standards for geometry. Scroll down to, let's say, reflection symmetry. And then that would take me to my concept page. And once again, I can customize my read. I can include any of these other resources. I could go back to that homepage and do the same thing for next generation science standards. So those two are specifically tagged for references. So let's say Earth and Space Sciences. And this summer we had a great eclipse, so we could talk about eclipse. And you can kind of see different pieces in there. So all of the resources are available through different avenues based on your goal and what you're working off of. So definitely kind of check that out and go from there.
All right, so keep the questions coming in as you guys have them. Katie, you referenced the license earlier. Maybe, yeah, you're already on it. Why don't you talk them through our license and how that works?
Sure. So CK12 runs under a Creative Commons attribution non-commercial licensing. So I just pulled up, searched on Creative Commons, pulled up a quick, easy reference page for this. And the general gist is that you are free to share this material. You can redistribute it, you can adapt it, so that's the option to customize and build upon it. You cannot sell our material, so that's kind of the one little caveat we have on there is that you can't take our content and go make a ton of money off of it because we are providing this to you for free, and a lot of schools that have republished content are really trying to build up this community of accessible content. So that's kind of just there's two sides to that. There's this is great, I can use all this material and I can adapt it. But there's also a couple of kind of terms that work with that. You have to give appropriate credit. So if you're including images, you want to make sure that they fit under that license and that you're crediting the photographer. We kind of adjust if you're adding new things in there, make sure that you're keeping the authors and different pieces in there. But you can definitely use this. And we've had schools that, Tullahoma specifically, when they made their social studies, they actually contacted other sites and places that they wanted to use material and didn't have appropriate licensing for and got permission to use it within our license. Or we've had other schools link out to materials that they couldn't include because of licensing restrictions. But you're always going to want to check to make sure that, if it's not original work of yours or something that we created, you are including that as you go through there.
Okay, so let's move on to the next section. We are going to talk about basic edits, and then we're going to talk more about sharing content. I've already showed you could take a URL and share it with your students, but we've got a couple other options for you as well. So Katie, why don't you pick a book and let's show them how to do those easy edits.
Great. So as we work our way here, I'm going to pick an algebra book, and And actually, let's go back because the middle school books you can kind of access from a number of different areas. These are really content areas. So I could pull up a middle school book from algebra, but it covers arithmetic topics. So you'll see kind of that 7th grade math book in here as well. But that's a great one that we kind of started to see that maybe we'll use as a reference. And I'm going to just, before I start customizing, once again say, you can use this book as it is. You do not have to take the time to customize it. That's just an added feature that will help you add in more relevant information for your students, great extra kind of modalities and different pieces. So if I'm going to take this, I'm going to click Customize. I'm going to add a demo for today, only because I demo all the time, but you can often add a school information in there. That's probably the simplest way, as Lindsay said, to kind of adjust. And then if I look here, I can say I want to teach fractions before decimals. And I can literally drag that section above decimals. I had one year when I was teaching high school math where I did kind of trig in the middle of functions because my kids were done with functions. And so we went chapter 1, 2, 4, and then we had to go back to chapter 3. And all my kids went, wait, what? And so this is a great way for you to have your book in the order that you want to teach it and present that information to your students. You can say, okay, I'm not going to do prob and stats at this point in time. So I can just delete that by clicking the X and removing that section. I can do it for statistics as well. I could even do it within a chapter. So I can expand a chapter and say, let's say we're going to do maybe skip nets of solid figures this year for whatever reason. Now, if I did that at this point in time, I could always find the original CK12 book and add that section back in a future year. So don't worry that you've lost it. You just kind of took it out of this book as it was. If I wanted to adjust content, so if maybe we had different topic areas than this one, let's say we had geometry. We have kind of angles, scale factors, rotations. If I was going to put something in another section, I can even drag between different pieces. If I can put that in there we go, which makes no sense at all. So we would put it back in that section that we wanted. And you can drag kind of up and down. So simplest options were that option to rename up here, to reorder sections, and to delete sections. You can add content to here. So let's say you wanted to teach kind of a chapter that was even pre-grade 7. So you could say like review chapter. So I can add a chapter to my book, and anytime you're adding content to your book, you're going to see it. I'm just going to collapse these so you can see it. You're going to see that extra content at the bottom, whether that's a section that you're adding or a chapter that you're adding, but you'll always see it at the bottom here. And then I could open this up and drag any content into that chapter that I've created. I can actually upload sections from Word or Google. You will probably have to do some formatting updates. Math equations in particular don't like to play even across Word and Google really well. So definitely kind of think about formatting within our system, but you can definitely put a bunch of content up there by section. So when you upload a Word file or a Google Doc, think of it as one of these sections within a chapter, not the whole book that you're uploading. And then I can write a new modality. So I could pick a section, it's going to just save that book, and I could write something from scratch. And a modality, once again, is that option to, in this case, it would be a read modality. So demo, read section. And then I can kind of edit and create something, test run, and save that. And that is going to show up in my book. So if I then look at this section, once again, it's down at the bottom. I'm going to expand that chapter, add it in here, and then even say I'm going to drag this whole chapter up to the beginning because I really want it to be the review. And let's see if we can do this and drag that down a bit. And now it's that first chapter. So some options from there. Now, the other thing you can do is you can actually go into any of our content here and start editing the content level itself. So here, you'll see kind of once we look at our library in a minute, you'll be able to see where this is coming from. But I can start editing this content. And I'm just going to talk about kind of the basics for this. You can see this whole toolbar full of options for kind of editing this different pieces, calculates. I could change the name and say calculates his profit. Michael, how can Michael account his profit if he sells? And you can adjust whatever you wanted to do on this particular read. Insert images, insert video, as long as you're not in a header row. Kind of take a few minutes and explore that. The actual specifics of this, as we said, we cover in that advanced editing option, but you definitely can make general edits and choose different formats as you work your way through here.
Katie, before we get too far in here, why don't we talk, you mentioned earlier of this is a great process for individuals who are creating and or editing their own book, but the collaboration process looks slightly different just because there are a few things to keep in mind when it comes to saving your book. So I'm going to let you explain to them a little bit about our collaborative editor.
So as Lindsay said, when editing collaboratively or kind of working with others, it's the same process almost as if you were working by yourself, but just trying to do too many things at once, which is something you never want to do. So right in here, as you can see, I have this section open. What I don't want to do is I don't want to then go, let's go here for a second, into my library. And then you'll see in my library all the stuff that I've been working on recently. So here's that single variable expressions. Here's this book I'm working on. I don't want to open that book in another tab and start making changes there. Because if we go back to this, you can see right here, hopefully, this little R4 at the end of this title. And that's telling you the revision number on it. And so every time you go in to edit something, it kind of makes a new edits and updates. And if you happen to open it in 12 different places, you could end up saving an older version of your book, and you don't want to do that. So I would say your best option is to limit tabs. I'm going to close this library tab so I don't open anything else. I'm going to close all these other tabs. So I'm working in one place at one time. And you only ever want to have one person working in that account. So just like you want to limit your tabs, you don't want to have you have a tab open and another person to have a tab open. We have had schools that create kind of like a math department account, and then they have their books for that math department in one place. And then they just go in, one person goes in and makes some updates, and then another person goes in. But at this point in time, they're not all trying to edit the same book at the same time and kind of saving older versions and rewriting. The other thing is I want to make sure that I save this book. So I'm going to talk about draft and finalize just while I'm in here for a second. I can finalize this book and still go back and make changes. So don't be scared of that finalized draft option. That finalized draft just means that if I then share this URL of the book, anyone outside the owner account can see those updates. If, however, I started making changes and I had a student walk into my room and ask me for extra help and I had to run out the door, I could say I want to keep those changes that I'm working on, but I'm not ready to share those with my students or my colleagues. So I'm going to keep that as a draft. And then that section I'll go back and I'll work on later. So just kind of keep that in mind as we work through. I also want to save this whole book as we go through here. And then anywhere that I'm exploring, so let me open a new tab for a second. If I'm exploring here and I say I want content on algebra and I really like a section on ordering real numbers, whatever that looks like, I could open this particular read. You always have this option to add to a FlexBook textbook. So if I'm not in edit mode, I'm good to go. I can add that to a FlexBook textbook. If that was still option, so this is the one we were working on, I'm going to add that in there. If I was in edit mode and then I saved this book before accessing it again, so right now I'm not going to see it, I can go to, once I've done this, I'm going to then say, okay, I added it to that book. I can go to my library. I can open that book cleanly without any issue. And then I can kind of start sharing that and editing it accordingly. So just think about that for a minute as you're working your way through. Let's see if we can get that thing to load as we go through. But you want to kind of talk about all those different places and just keep that as clean as you possibly can. So now you'll see that section at the very bottom, and I could go in and edit and rearrange it and put it wherever I wanted to do. So the last question is, okay, well, let's say I did finalize that content and I do want my students to see it. What are my options? So you have a couple of options. Option A is to use this URL at the top. You can share that with people. If they're logged in, they can see that book, direct link on the URL, and that's, you want to make sure that because others can share it, you're staying within all that license and they're all aware of that license, and kind of working that way. You could share this to a group. So you could say, I'm going to create a class group. We had some kind of programming. I could share it to a class, and they could see that within that class as a resource. There's a green little share plane at the bottom that would allow me to share this directly to Google Classroom or post on social media or share it in an email. So another option to share. And then I could access that in an offline reader. So any student that had this link could click on it and then access it in the offline reader. And that would open up that offline reader. So they could actually access it offline within Chrome. And then this last option, which is kind of what we encourage our users to do when they've made a bunch of changes and they want to share this with the community, or especially if they're creating new content that doesn't exist on CK12, is choose that publish option. So let's say I made all these changes and now I want to publish it. That would allow students to access it without logging in immediately. And then that's when I would be able to see it in search, or if you tagged it to a schools page, I would then be able to find it under that schools page. And so that last step is really important, especially if you want to kind of put all your books for a whole school or district in one place. You would need to publish them to make them accessible that way. So kind of all your different options as you work your way through.
All right, so tons of information, right? There's a couple of things I wanted to point out, and maybe Katie, maybe you can navigate to it on the screen, of just a few of the things that I really love about customizing our FlexBook is the ability to add images, to embed videos, to include links, and I think she briefly touched on that. And we'll cover that more in the advanced editing, but we have so many teachers who are using these books to like flip the classroom. Maybe I'm making my videos and I want to embed my own videos. You have the feature there. In schools we work with, often you've built a lot of material on Google Slides, and your Google Slide presentation, it has an embed code. So you can embed your Google Slides, you can embed YouTube, you can embed Vimeo. Anything that has an embed code should be able to show up in our books. A couple of you asked earlier, I think, about like our PLIX and our simulations. Because they have such dynamic features, we're not embedding them at the moment, but how we handle linking our PLIX or our simulations is, again, stealing that URL from those resources and then including that link inside of the FlexBook so that it's there, it's all in one place, students can find it. So yeah, Katie's picking one here. You could just take that link and then copy and paste that into your FlexBook. So I just wanted to point that out, where again, we'll talk a lot more if you join us for an advanced one sometime about all of those different menu options, about the math editor, about all the different things that you can do. But at a minimum, I at least wanted to reemphasize, you can do your videos, you can insert images, really make the book have your own flavor for your students. We're definitely approaching the hour mark here. I wanted to tackle a couple questions, and then I'm going to do a little bit of relevant wrap-up information for you, and then we'll send you off at the hour mark here. But Katie, a question that came in as we were talking about customizing was, can you customize by standard? Which I know you showed the standards browser earlier, and then you may have just answered it too with the revision number of, if changes are made to a book, do students have to re-download it, or how does that work? So.
Okay, so the first question had to do with standards. So if you wanted to look at, it looks like science, next generation human standards. So if we were looking at maybe life sciences there, you could kind of pick any of these topics as you worked your way through. So let's say RNA, and then you could pick that particular read or section. And it actually looks like there's a couple, so kind of options based on the book that they were coming from. But let's say I liked this one to work off of. And I could add that to my FlexBook and kind of build it in there, or I could just customize this directly if I wasn't working in a FlexBook structure and change that particular read. So that allows you to customize content if you're searching by standard to start with. So definitely check out that standards browser on the homepage. And then the question about the re-download the book for offline use. If a student downloads it offline, they have taken it offline and it is no longer updating online. If they are accessing via the app online, they would kind of see that content in the up-to-date version. But if they wanted to download it offline, so let's say if I went back to a whole book, because when you download a book, you download either an entire book or you download by chapter. So you'd actually want to kind of look at that and say, okay, I'm going to access this book, whatever this looks like, and then I could access this in my offline reader. And if you actually opened this reader, you'd see kind of those different pieces, and you'd see the option to download the full book or particular sections.
Okay, I'm going to steal the screen back here because I do want to tell you all some information. And then we always stay on. I said, you know, we're usually conscious of that hour mark, and then we will stay on and we will answer any questions you guys have. So keep the questions coming into Q&A, but let me go ahead and share some information with all of you. We've mentioned throughout this presentation of like all these different modalities and things that CK12 offers. FlexBook is just one piece of what the CK12 Foundation offers. So if you wanted to see a comprehensive overview, we have this new reference page, which is ck12.org/overview. And these are all expandable tabs that will talk to you about more about our different products and maybe get you, you know, thinking about how to enhance your FlexBooks or add other supplemental resources to your classroom. Another thing that I for sure want to encourage you guys to do is to join our CK12 Cafe. We have one that's called Jumpstart for Educators, and then we have some state-specific cafes as well. This is a form. It's got questions, you know, resources from the team here. This is a great place to network with others and talk to us. One of the questions that our people who do the PLIX have been asking is they would like you guys to suggest some questions of the week that they will then kind of choose their PLIX, build some PLIX to get them in the hands of students, but they really want to make it impactful for what you guys are teaching with your students right now. So you might be on the lookout for that question in the form. And then you guys have joined us today. We have several more upcoming webinars in the next month. If you're interested in a full session on simulations and PLIX, that's on October 25th. Groups and Practice 101, we referenced it a couple times. Our practice tool is amazing. It's adaptive. It's easy to assign. I really encourage you to attend that one if you can make it. And then our Everything CK12 is like our high-level, comprehensive overview of all of our different resources. We're going to be running that one again in November. You may have heard we certified our first round of educators this past summer. Right now, our certified educator program is really just a summer program, but since you guys joined us today for FlexBook 101, and that is one of the sessions we will be running again this summer, if you have in the back of your mind that you're going to want to be a certified educator this summer, shoot an email to jumpstart@ck12.org. There's an assignment that goes with this session, and for those of you who are just attending today, I didn't want to overwhelm you with an assignment, but if you are somebody who you'd like to get a head start on your certification, shoot us an email to jumpstart@ck12.org and we'll give you an assignment and we'll keep record of your attendance and be able to apply it to next summer's sessions. Also, this link, ck12.org/certified2017, it's another great place to go for information about all of our different offerings for CK12. So lastly, a couple more things. We love your feedback. You've attended this webinar. Thank you so much. Tell us what went well, what didn't go well. We have this tiny URL link that's CK12 Webinar 17. If you have a couple minutes, answer the questions. It really helps us prepare future webinars. And lastly, you are supported here. We have an excellent support team. If you email support@ck12.org, they're going to do everything they can to get you answers to your questions. And then if you're a social media person, particularly our Facebook and our Twitter are quite active. Follow us, like us, stay up to date with others, and then don't forget to share your participation in this webinar with your colleagues. So that's the hour mark. If you guys need to head off, you're welcome to sign out. We've got, hopefully, I'm going to kick it back over to Katie and see what open questions we have. So now's your chance to ask more questions if you would like to.
So we had a question just come in on the chat window about certificate for CPD credits. So in terms of getting credits for any particular school or district, we're happy to document your hour here. Just once again, email Jumpstart. So that's something that you can kind of do throughout the program if you need something specific sooner than kind of next summer when we redo that whole program. In the meantime, if you are looking to be certified accordingly, feel free to do that. Lindsay referenced, kind of while I'm thinking about different pieces that were just asked or referenced, Lindsay referenced the cafe. You can access that via here. And that second question there is that what PLIX do you want to see next week? So definitely check that out. And then we had a question about Google as an app. So one of the best resources is if you scroll all the way to the bottom and you click on Tools and Apps by CK12, you can definitely see our FlexBook online and offline access. Our physics sims are also available offline via our app on tablets and mobile phones based on the screen size. And then our practice apps, so students can actually do their homework on their phone or a tablet as well. This gives you more integration on, or more information on some of our integrations with various learning management systems. So if you're using one of these, definitely check that out. And then this Chrome extension would allow you to kind of, if you wanted to put that on all your Chromebooks, if you were using Chromebooks in your school, you could kind of do that, and then kids could one-click get into CK12 from there. So that's probably addresses that app and Google question as you work your way through. But that looks like the only questions we have at this point in time. You are all more than welcome to sign off. If you have any other questions, we'll stay on for maybe another minute just to give you a chance to add in anything else. Otherwise, thanks for joining us, and we'll go from there.
Okay, in the absence of any questions, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks for being here, and we hope to chat with you guys again on a future webinar. Thank you.